I just wrote down lift, shift, clear and align. And straight away I kind of knew what that meant. I totally believe in talk therapy. There's limitations with that.
The first thing is lift.
Yeah, lifting your energy and vibration. You know, people move through their days and can often be so busy or so stressed that their energy is really low. So it's identifying where does our energy go. This next step is actually the most important bit, having an understanding of what kind of pulls you out of your centre, what's caused that shift. And usually it will be how you've interpreted something. As a talk therapist, I wasn't sure how to clear out the energy out of the body. I was knowing that talking is not doing it enough. We're so controlled, we're so in our minds, and our body is actually where everything is stored. If we're in an uncomfortable situation, that energy is now in our bodies. When does that come out? So that's why we've got to do the work. We are coming from, what's expected from us, what society sort of prescribes for us, what our parents encourage us to do. Am I actually living the life that is aligned with the things that I truly value? Healing is continuous, and if you've got that big vision, that's your roadmap. What are the baby steps that I could create to work towards that?
Welcome everyone to the Reconnect Self podcast, the show that helps you ultimately rediscover what brings you joy. My name is Scott and I am a filmmaker and your host for today. And I'm here with my wife, Tracey, who is a counsellor of 20 plus years. How are you, babe?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am well, thank you. I'll just quickly get into our sponsor because we, again, are supported by the good people at Ultratune Whitfords. So it's Dee and the team. They came on the Reconnect to Self retreat last year. They are listeners of the show and they just wanted to really support us because they don't actually need more business. They're doing this purely because they believe in what we're doing, and I think that actually says quite a lot about them. They've been in the game for 25 years, family owned and run, and the way they do things is very much old school customer service, straight up, honest and no BS. Because I think we've all been in that situation where you're at the mechanic, they are talking to you about what your car needs and you have no idea what they're saying and you have no idea what it's going to cost. And at the end of the day, you just want to have someone that you can trust. So if you are in Perth and you need a mechanic, go and see Dee and the team at Ultratune in Whitfords and tell them that Scott and Tracey sent you. Now, it's halfway through July, which means we're halfway through the 30-day challenge. We've decided it's totally fine if people want to join us late.
Absolutely.
Still 2 weeks left of the challenge. And it's not really a challenge. You want to tell them essentially, in a nutshell, what we're doing.
Basically, just for the month of July, we are going to be posting a self-care practice or something that we've done that's, really, really good for us every day for that month of July. You don't have to post, but you can certainly, get motivation from watching the things that Scott and I are posting and other members might be posting. So it doesn't have to be that you're actively doing something every day in terms of posting, but just as long as you are doing some sort of practice, some sort of intentional act to show yourself that you're important for the month of July, and hopefully that will then, continue on after July, but at least we can get those habits sort of set in the winter months when it's a bit trickier to kind of keep up with those routines and practices that we might have been good with during summer.
And that's why you started this.
That's exactly why I started this. I really struggle during the winter to keep up with my habits and rituals, and it's also a time to change them up with the season and have it be just a little bit different.
Yeah.
So this will keep me on track and hopefully everyone else as well.
Because beach walks are a huge part of your
I loved
routine.
my beach walks, in the mornings and things. And the beach isn't the same in the winter, for the early mornings, and the sand's a bit more boggy. It's not quite as nice. So, I definitely need to look for other ways to care for myself.
Beautiful. So come and join us. It's basically very simple. It's a WhatsApp group, and all you need to do is jump on the website, traceyquayle.com. There is a big image there that you can click on. It takes you through to the challenge page. You put your name and your email address. That comes straight to me. I email you back and say, hey, what's your mobile number? I'll add you to the group. And away you go.
And it's totally free.
Totally free. Oh, yeah, that's a very important point. It's totally free. Okay, today's episode is, and it's actually something I'm very proud of you for, is you're a bit of a visionary. And as much as I like to think, on big picture, I think you're, of the two of us, bigger picture. And so the whole episode is about this kind of model that you have created, which I can't remember if it came to you in a meditation or it was just ongoing and you kept sort of working on it. But it's lift, shift, clear, and align. So we're going to devote the whole episode to sort of explaining what that is and how it can help people. But I think the place we should start is, because I think it's pretty amazing, because you sort of, I can't remember, you can tell us how you came up with it, but I remember you showing me in the notebook and I'm going, holy crap, that's amazing. So tell us the backstory.
Okay. So for those that have listened and heard, my spiritual journey, a few years ago, I started really getting into my meditations and breath work and things. But back when I was just doing my meditations, because when you meditate, both sides of your brain come online compared to when we're kind of just in our analytical brain, and we're not having both sides be represented at the same time. We don't always get creative and we don't always get ideas when we're in our left brain. So meditation is a way for us to kind of balance those both up, and lots of famous people often talk about getting lots of insights, and they call them downloads, after meditating. So this was one of mine. One day after meditating, I just wrote down the words lift, shift, clear, and align, and straight away I kind of knew what that meant. And it was already things that I was sort of doing with my clients, but it kind of came out kind of almost like in a complete package of, that would be the process. That would be what I think would lead to true healing. Because I was realizing as well that as much as I love my job and I totally believe in talk therapy, there's limitations with that as well. And so while it can help in lots of different ways, there's also things that it can't quite get to and is not as helpful with, in certain areas. So this particular program that I've started to, create addresses all of those areas that kind of need to be looked at for true healing.
So should we start with the first part of it? Actually, before we do, you specifically were talking about meditation, but the same things can happen in breath work, right?
Oh, yeah, because breath work will again get you, into that really relaxed state with both sides of your brain coming online, and you don't have, the left brain dominating everything and sort of pulling everything and criticizing everything, with ideas and things. So yeah, anything that gets you kind of in flow, because even being creative can do that, can have you drop in ideas or, get access to information that you wouldn't normally consciously connect to.
So if anyone wants a insight into what it's like to live in this house, Tracey will come out of a meditation and be, blah, 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 I got this, I got that, I got that, I got that. And then we've got to get it all down because you have so many amazing ideas after this meditation. Then it's my job to try and formulate those into, okay, how are we going to make this work? So this has sort of evolved a little bit because we've done 3 retreats.
Yeah.
And I think the next one we do in August, this will be the first time we've probably changed to this, even though I guess it's sort of...
No, we were doing it already. It was just...
this is a really nice way to sort of explain it for people.
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing is lift, and I think that means lifting your vibration.
Yeah, lifting your energy and vibration. So, people move through their days and can often be so busy or so stressed that their energy is really low or really, poor. They're not feeling energized. They're not feeling like they've got a spring in their step. They're not looking forward to their day. Everything can feel like a slog.
Yeah.
So we want to change that.
I know how that feels.
Yeah.
So how do we go about changing that?
So it's identifying where does our energy go. So really looking at all the areas of our life and sort of seeing where's their energy being put and what's our return on investment. So are we really getting joy out of that? Are we feeling like it's worth our time? So an example of that can be, remember I said back in the day I used to, go out for lots of coffees and go out lots of catch-ups and things. And I started checking in with myself to go, am I actually really enjoying them for the amount of kind of time I'm giving to it, in the drive to get there, in the time that I'm spending, with those friends, and the drive back. Like it could be a 3-hour chunk of time, 4-hour chunk of time.
Yeah.
And so I started realizing that, okay, sometimes I do really enjoy that, and other times it was just, it was fine. So I started really checking into where is my energy going? How am I feeling at the end of that? So if I was comparing those coffee dates with some of those friends versus a beach walk, I'm then realizing that, the beach walk's a better investment of my time and how I'm feeling at the end of that.
Yep.
So if people can really identify where is my energy going and how can I make a good use of my energy? Like if we're thinking about money, if you're at $100, you're trying to make the $100 go as far as you can with as much value as you can.
Yeah.
It's the same with our energy. So if you're recognizing that, going and visiting that relative is quite draining and you're there for half a day, you might start going, actually, I'm going to start meeting them at the shops. I'm going to claw back 2 hours of that at least.
Yeah.
So you're starting to recognize what can I do to start conserving my energy and really putting it in the places that give me the best bang for my buck.
Is there any things that people can do to help them figure out what does bring them joy? Like I just think some people can get stuck. And
I think even just experimenting. So often I'll suggest to people to go onto Pinterest and type in self-care activities.
Yeah.
Because you might end up with a list of 50 things. And there might be things like gardening or craft or jigsaws or, big, huge range. So you don't have to like all the 50 suggestions. But if you ran your eyes over that list, you might go, actually, I haven't done that for ages. Or, gosh, I've never thought of doing that, but maybe I'll give that a try. So it could even just be freshening it up and sort of trying different things and seeing how that leaves you feeling.
Yeah.
Like I never used to meditate 10 years ago.
No.
Or do breath work or do my own beach walks. They're all things that have kind of come about in the last 5 years. So I think trying different things, and that's obviously why our retreats are so successful. People get to come along and try different things, and all of a sudden at the end of that, they're really liking breath work, or they're going and buying ice baths to do cold immersions. Like they're figuring out things for them that they resonated with on the retreat. So I think the more that we try, then we can see what lands for us.
Yeah. Yeah, we had 2 people from the last retreat have purchased ice baths.
And then loads continue on with the breath work.
Yeah, I would say the majority.
Yeah,
Definitely
keep doing that. So I think it's just trying to look for a variety of things to try and then checking out how that leaves you feeling. And then playing around with, kind of what that looks like in your day. Because it doesn't have to be huge things. It could be if you realise that, gosh, me getting up a little bit earlier and setting myself up for the day before the kids get up, before my partner gets up, in the summer, if you could sit in the sun, with sunlight in your eyes when you're drinking a cup of tea in the mornings, even that could be, wow, it really gives me a good start to my day. My energy feels better than waking up to the alarm and, getting out of bed at the last second and feeling like you're kind of behind the 8 ball all day.
Yep.
So it's just checking those things out, but it's not even with the things that you're doing, it's even paying attention to what is my self-talk. And if you're going to be honest, like bitching about people can really pull our energy down, pull our vibration down. Doesn't leave you feeling very good when you're bitching about someone.
Yeah.
Complaining about someone, whinging about someone.
Well, it's usually because it's coming from a place of where you're unhappy in yourself.
Yeah.
Usually, I would assume. I'm no counsellor.
But people can also do that out of habit.
Yeah.
Like it can be very habitual to complain about people.
Yeah, that actually makes sense because I think, if you're catching up with someone, it can give you fertile ground to have quite a long conversation if you're talking about someone else. But
But that can take your energy.
Yeah, I agree. If you're talking about vibration, like it's a low vibration, right?
Yep. So if you walked into a gathering or a group of people and you could hear, 3 or 4 people bitching about work and bitching about all the policies they don't like and whatever, you'll feel that energy.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the other side of the room and they're talking about something quite lighthearted, something quite fun, you'll feel that lift of energy over on that side of the room. So really paying attention to what kind of conversations do I want to be involved in?
Yeah, that's a good one. What about, because obviously we've talked about, I'm going to use the word modalities, even though I'm not 100% sure what that means, but, breath work, grounding.
That is modalities. Okay. Yeah, there's different techniques,
does it have to be modalities? Because I'm thinking about me and DJing.
No, anything like a practice. And it doesn't have to be practice, but you're doing that as a practice in terms of you do that once a week, you do that once a fortnight. Yeah. So anything that you're doing regularly that can, make you feel nice. So an instrument or doing anything musical, that can be lovely. you guys thought I was crazy yesterday.
That's because you looked crazy.
Banging on my drum.
You did look crazy.
So I over the weekend made my own medicine drum, and that's because, you know, in breathwork we often use instruments to help people release and you know, shift energetically and things. And this drum was something that I made and was just playing around with on my hammock yesterday. And I was trying to actually, because for anyone that doesn't know, I'm actually not very rhythmic, and I don't really find the beat very easily. So I was sitting there with headphones listening to music, just trying to hit the beat.
Yeah, and, it was quite the look, because I was in the kitchen with our middle daughter, and Tracey's out swinging on the hammock, and we can see her from the kitchen, and she's got her headphones on and she's banging the drum. And because we can't hear the music, we don't know what beat that you are banging to. And it was kind of like not a regular boom, boom, boom. It was a bit haphazard.
Maybe I wasn't hitting it right.
It might have been that part of the song. And Ali looked at me and I said, she's stepped it up to a new level of crazy, hasn't she? And she goes, yeah. And I said, but we still love her. And she agreed. I don't think, because she's that age, you know, everything is about appearances.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I think the way that you have, I mean, you've embraced it fully. Like in the most recent retreat that we did, the breath work that you ran, but also the room that you set up and all of your, I don't even know what they all are, but all the shakers, and you obviously had your crystals, but you had these rhythmic, I don't, what are they called?
Oh gosh, are they dreamsticks? No.
One of them is, they're both wooden, and one of them feels like it's full, it's a stick.
It's a rain stick. It's a rain stick.
A rain stick. Sounds, supposed to sound like rain.
Yeah.
Feels like it's got rice or something in there.
Yeah.
And then, but then you have this other one that is like individual feathers made of wood, and then when you shake it, it makes a rattling sort of sound.
Oh, that's called a seed. What was it? Seed pod rattle.
That is a rattle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were good, and I like the way that you've embraced that, and I think people get something out of it. And like, I think you've undersold this drum. How many hours were you there?
10. It was
a
very
massive
long time.
all-day thing. Like, you're not just cobbling this together in an hour. Like,
no,
it was intricate.
they literally say you birth a drum, and so you've got the hoop, and you've got the kangaroo skin, and you're threading it onto there. You're having to decorate the hoop, but you're also then threading the skin onto the hoop to secure it, and then you're tensioning it. So yeah, I was there for hours and hours, and it was a ceremonial day. Every time we came back into the teepee, they would smudge us and clear us from the energy from outside of the teepee, and we weren't allowed to talk about anything that wasn't to do with drumming and being present the whole time we were doing it, just so that we're very intentional in what we're putting into the energies in that drum.
Amazing. Have you posted that on social media?
Not yet. I will post that, yeah. And then at the very end, they had smudgings, smoke, a smoking ceremony. Yeah, just to cleanse it and to give thanks and gratitude to the kangaroo and the sheep from the drum beater.
Yeah, that drumstick, amazing.
It's beautiful. Yes. So going back to, I'm doing that to lift my vibration. I'm doing that to sort of have some time out and to, you know, be in a Zen space. But when I'm looking at my day, that's something that I'm knowing is giving me energy and making me feel even, you know, calm and clear, compared to perhaps something else like just watching reality TV.
Yes. Yeah.
And in fact, I think I probably don't watch nearly as much TV as I used to, as I'm adding in all these practices. And that, again, is a bit of bang for my buck, not just numbing out on TV, but instead, you know, maybe listening to some music that I can use for my breath work, or swinging in my hammock and, you know, banging on my drum. And
So do you reckon it's related to being creative?
Creative can definitely, you know, give you energy, and it also can feel like we lose time when that happens, and that's that getting into flow, which shows you're really enjoying yourself. It's the same as what the kids say. They go, oh gosh, school holidays go so quickly, or, you know, my Sundays go so quickly, but my school day goes, you know, so long. And it's because you're really enjoying what you're doing. You know, time goes so fast, but when you're having that slog of, oh, I don't really want to be doing this. Yep. So just pay attention to your day. Where are you getting that feeling of, gosh, time went so fast and I really enjoyed that, versus, how much longer?
Yeah. And that's all around your energy, right?
Yeah, around your
what's
energy.
giving you energy. And I guess that's why I linked it to being creative, because for me, that's what gives me energy.
But it also could even be your routines, being aware of me going to bed really late and feeling sluggish in the morning, that ruins my whole day's energy.
Yeah.
Or how do I feel when I've gone to bed, at the right time and I've gotten up at the same time every morning? Like, what does my energy feel like then? So really just checking in of what your energy is doing and where it's being depleted and where it's being recharged.
So I guess you could also put food in. What are you putting into your body?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, paying attention to those sort of things.
Yep.
So that first one is really around awareness, because if you don't know where your energy is going, where your time is going, how you're feeling at the end of it, how are you going to make changes?
Yep.
Because most people kind of feel locked into, this is just how life is.
Yeah.
My life is so busy, or what else could I change? And they feel very trapped, in their situation. So when we can actually start analysing and looking at everything and going, well, do you need to do that? And can you reduce that? Or could you do more of this because that gives you so much happiness?
Well, I think, and you might have told me this, but I do it as myself as well. I think it was of someone who came on our retreat, the most recent one. Her son plays a lot of soccer, so she's at soccer training a lot. Our kids play sport. I coach soccer, but on Mondays I take Ali to footy training, and I have an hour which could be spent sitting in the car scrolling Instagram, but I don't. It's pretty close to the beach, so I can drive to the beach depending on the weather. I'll either go on the sand. If it's cold and rainy, I'll go for a walk along the footpath and listen to some sort of, I'm going to say self-help, but it's not self-help. Like, I don't know, Diary of a CEO, like any kind of podcast, like this podcast, where I'm using it as some way to improve myself.
To learn something new.
Learn something or whatever. But that's a conscious choice that I'm making. And I'm doing it at a time when it would be very easy to say, well, I have to be at training.
Yeah.
But you still have a choice.
Yep.
What are you going to do with that hour? Unless you're literally coaching.
Yeah. I almost call that sort of time like dead time.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you use that for something a bit more productive?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have we covered off lift?
Yeah, I think that's
sufficiently.
Yeah.
Okay. So shift is the next thing. Talk to me about that. So
that's looking at your perspectives on things. So having an understanding of, what kind of pulls you out of your center. And, we talked about this before. Your center is just kind of when you're feeling zen and calm and loving, you're in your heart. You're, maybe when you first wake up, if you've had a nice sleep and you're feeling, looking forward to the day, that's you in your center. And then throughout the morning, maybe something happens and you get a little bit stressed about the traffic or the kids not getting ready in time or kids fighting, whatever it might be, you're getting pulled out of your center. You're no longer in that calm and in that zen. So we then want to see what's caused that. What's caused that shift out of that zen. And usually it will be how you've interpreted something. So it's not just of what's happened, it's the way that you've interpreted it, the story you've told yourself is what's pulled you out of your zen. So then we want to really see, do I need to have that reaction? So say, for example, I'm walking through the shops and I don't know, maybe I see kids being silly and they're mucking around and, if I was a grumpy old man, and I'm looking at that, I could be thinking,
anything about that.
I would be thinking, oh, kids nowadays, they're so disrespectful and loud and look at them making a scene over there. And, I can interpret that in a really negative way. And then all of the emotions I'm going to have, the feelings I'm going to create for myself are going to be pretty yucky. But if I'm looking at that through my eyes, I might be like, oh, I love that kids can just have fun and, be a bit silly with each other and, they've got those good connections. And to me, looking at it from that lens, I'm going to have a totally different set of chemicals. So we really want to see how are we interpreting things, how are we interpreting our world, how are we interpreting our interactions, because usually it's coming from the stories that we're telling ourselves, and that could be, from our histories, from our experiences. But we want to just check out, what am I saying to myself that's pulling me out of my zen or pulling me out of my center? What was that interpretation that was happening there?
So this sounds like it, it's just one of 4 steps, but it sounds like it's huge.
Yeah, it's multi-layered because it's bringing it again back into your awareness. So often when I'm working with a client individually, I'll get them to use a feeling sheet And that's just so that they can identify, first of all, as soon as they're pulled out of their centre, what am I feeling? Even me who does this as a job, I wouldn't be able to pick all of my feelings off the top of my head just randomly. And that's because feelings come in clusters. So we might end up with like 10 or 12 feelings when we're, really thinking about something. But the really subtle ones are hard to pick. So sad, mad, frustrated, angry, they're easy. They're very noticeable, strong feelings. But something like feeling dismissed or disrespected, they could be really hard to sort of pick. So if you're looking at a sheet, they can just jump off the page at you. So my first step would be, what am I feeling? And I would get the person to look at a feeling sheet and then write on a separate page all the feelings that jump off the page at them. They don't have to question why, they're just writing them down. Then the next step is going, what's just happened for me to feel that way? So that's when we go, okay, was it that something actually physically just happened? Like maybe you came home and you said something to me. Is it a thought that I've had? So I'm thinking, oh gosh, this weekend I've got that party to go to. I don't want to go to that party. So it's that, thinking that we've just done. If we can't figure it out, I would say to people, go back to the beginning of your day. How did you feel when you woke up this morning? No, I was fine. Yep, good. Okay, what about mid-morning? No, I was still good. What about lunchtime? Yes, something happened there. So by tracking it, we could also see, was it an accumulation of lots of little things? So things in the moment that might not have gone so well, but it wasn't really a big enough deal that you kind of remembered it. But by the time the fourth thing that was small happened, it's kind of that accumulating effect.
Yep.
So we would be able to track, I think it was just lots of little things that went wrong this morning versus one big thing. So we could track it that way. So that second step is just all about, what did I say to myself? What just happened?
And for anyone who doesn't know, I think you might have said it, but a feeling sheet it's a A4, well, it can be as big as you want, but it's got so many descriptive feelings on there.
Yeah.
Because I think the English language, it's pretty comprehensive, but feelings are so layered and complex that trying to even pick the right word to match your feeling can be difficult.
Yeah.
So if you've got 100 words in front of you, it helps out.
Yeah, it can be easy to see what jumps out, and that can give you more information than to go, oh, wow, actually, I didn't really realise that's how I was interpreting that situation until I saw that I felt disrespected, was what jumped off the page at me. So, first step, what did I see, on the page that jumped out at me? What's just happened to cause that? And then this next step is actually the most important bit, I would pretty much say. In fact, I don't really care about your feelings, which sounds pretty harsh as a therapist. But the reason I say that to people is because you only have those feelings because of the way that you interpreted that situation. If you would interpret it differently, it would be different. So the third step is, what am I saying to myself, or what's my interpretation of that situation? And that is crucial because that's going to tell you what's prompted all of those emotions. And so if you don't pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, that's also the information you're not passing on to your partner. Say you're having disagreement with your partner, or you're having conflict with your partner, you need to be able to come back and say, when that just happened, I interpreted that in this particular way. So I'll give an example about that. If I've got a couple and one person's, gotten annoyed at the other person, and then we've, unpacked it and said, what was it that happened just then? That person might say, well, when he came home and, straight away into the kitchen and, greeted the kids, and maybe he just called across the room to me, her interpretation might be, oh God, once again, I'm not important.
Yep.
And so he has no clue that that's what she's thinking, but because of the interpretation of that behaviour, now she's annoyed. And he might have no clue why she's annoyed, but it was to do with that interpretation of that scenario that has led to that feelings because of, interpreting that way. So we want to see, what are we saying to ourselves? How are we interpreting a certain situation? Because that's directly creating our chemicals.
And that's what I was saying earlier. It's a lot of work, right? Like, I imagine you're getting into potentially childhood and what shapes your interpretations. All of these, what you say to yourself and how you view a certain situation is ultimately based on everything that's happened to you before then.
So that's why it's really important to look at those triggers, because, when we think about, even with us, if you haven't gotten me the gift that I deem is thoughtful enough, caring enough, whatever, then my self-talk can be, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't know me very well. He doesn't make much effort. So that's just a story I'm saying, but that will drive my chemicals to make me feel frustrated with you or, underappreciated or, it's going to drive those chemicals because of the way I've interpreted that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was interpreting that from a different lens, which I'm sure you would love me to do, where I thought, oh gosh, bless his little heart, he's got it wrong again, but he tries his hardest.
Oh my God. Oh, that would be just joyous.
Yeah. So that would be a different way to interpret it, which would lead to a different, result in feelings. So I know for me that a lot of my frustration around presents does come from my childhood, where my sister got me the crimper that, I told her not to get. So it made me feel very unseen and very not cared about. And so that's kind of that trigger that still gets me now.
Yes. Probably slightly better. You've changed a bit, and I probably get a little bit better at buying gifts. And I also have a middle daughter who's very good at buying gifts, and she gives me advice because she wants her parents to not fight on Christmas Day.
She's a sweetie.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's really looking at what are those things that impact us. That's that second step. So once we can identify that, we can also start looking at how to change that perspective. And so it could be looking back at childhood. So in our retreats, we do look back on our younger years and sort of seeing the things that we've gone through and seeing what lens, that little person kind of was looking at life through. And then being able to see things, from those perspectives of our younger self and going back with compassion, and learning, what those experiences taught us. The more that they dig a little bit deeper into our background, we'll see what are the things that are still in there that are triggering us, in ways that might not be so helpful. And can we go and soften that and sort of acknowledge for that younger self, hey, look, it's different nowadays. We don't need to have that worry around that. An example of that would be you thinking you're still that student, with no money.
Yep.
So you're going back and acknowledging, hey, you needed to be careful with money for that period of time, but hey, we've got this now. We don't need to be so cautious about that. Or
so this is what we spend a lot of day one of the retreat focusing on.
Yeah.
If someone can't come on the retreat, what can they do to start this work? Because that's why I know this is probably the third time I've said it. Like, it's a lot, right? Like you're digging deep. Is journaling?
Journaling's so helpful.
Yeah,
really helpful, because you can then go back and sort of work through some of these instances you've been through. You could either get to know yourself more, and you're kind of tapping into kind of your subconscious in that way as well, because you're bypassing that conscious mind. As soon as you start really scribbling things down and it's faster than kind of your conscious mind can catch up, you could reread that and be like, oh my God, I don't even know where that came from. That information.
Something else popped into my head then was that I just know that there is a breath work called Inner Child. Mm-hmm. So doing something like that, I guess. Like, I'm just trying to give listeners or viewers if you're not coming on the retreat, or it's a couple of months until the next retreat, like if they are interested in trying to do this.
Mm-hmm. So journal prompts, you could Google, Inner Child journal prompts and kind of go back to things. But we want to go back to acknowledging the experiences that younger self has gone through and kind of seeing, what came from that. There might have been some lessons, yes, but there might have been some coping strategies that got developed around that time. So an example of that could be if someone was bullied in primary school, they might have, as a way of coping, gone to the library at recess and lunch to stay away from other kids, to be closer to the teachers. They might have not put their hand up in class because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. They might have started developing messages, in terms of their own mind, thinking, I'm better off on my own. I'm better off not sharing anything personal with anybody. I'm better off not going to parties or being around groups. So they're all the things that might have helped them at the time to minimize the bullying or, help themselves in some way to not draw it to themselves. But if they don't go back and kind of go, okay, I get it, little self, but we don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to keep all of our information just to ourselves or, not be around a group anymore, because guess what? I can be in situations now where if people were not going to be nice, I could move away. Like, I'm not that kid that's trapped in a schoolyard or, in a classroom anymore. I can actually have more autonomy over, myself now. So it's going back and acknowledging, how hard that was for that younger self, but again, soothing and sort of just saying, hey, I've got this now. You don't need to be so hyper vigilant on worrying about being hurt from other people now because I've got your back.
Yeah. And that's where a breath work can be good. Like, I know that you spend nearly a whole day on this on the retreat, but I've done that, and I've also done a breath work, and there can be maybe a moment. So some of these we haven't talked about Othership for a little while. So we have this agreement with Othership, which is your favorite breathwork app.
I love it.
And you can use the code word Tracey, and you get a 30-day free trial. So, and then you can browse, I don't know, there's hundreds, if not thousands of different breathworks. And there was one that you got me to do a couple of months ago, and it was kind of a longer one. It might have been like an hour or something. And I'm sure, because they're talking to you during the breath work and sort of getting you to think about certain times in your life. And so a lot of it is, because I don't remember specifically what the moment was, but it would have been something in, maybe to do with my parents' divorce or whatever it was. And then you go back and you kind of hold yourself and say, it's okay.
Yep.
I've got you.
Yep.
So it's a lot of it is about that, isn't it?
Well, I do that a lot with my clients. So in sessions, if we've had a session where we're going back into any sort of memories from childhood, and I definitely do this when I do EMDR, the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing technique, I will get people at the end of that to visualize their younger self in a certain spot that makes them feel really safe, maybe their bedroom, and then I'll get them to go into that memory as their adult self now and go and greet and comfort that child as if, that's your own child, and really acknowledging all the feelings that they had, and kind of just saying things to that younger self like, I get it. I get what you went through. I really understand. And that way you're really acknowledging and comforting and telling yourself that you matter, and that you're worth this energy and attention. So it's that healing that's coming from, acknowledging that younger self's experiences and also thanking that younger self for the lessons and the learnings of what we've been through. Because even if you go, oh my gosh, what did I learn from going through that horrible experience? Well, you learned how horrible that felt.
Yeah.
You would know that heartbreak feels really bad, or that having parents that do X, Y, and Z, is really tough for a kid. So now you're going to have compassion for somebody else that has gone through that same experience.
Yep.
So that's the learning you might have done.
Good.
So by being more compassionate to our younger selves, we're more likely to be more compassionate for ourselves now. And it also gives us opportunity that when we notice those triggers, we can stop and go, hold on a second, what's that younger self trying to tell us? Because that's where it's usually coming from, is that younger self sounding the alarm going, this isn't safe, or that person's not treating us very well, or this isn't how it should be. So we get to stop and go, hold on a minute, what's going on here?
Beautiful. So there's a lot of shift seems to be the right word for that, because there's a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, so you're shifting that perspective so that things feel and land differently for you because you're no longer seeing it from that particular way.
Okay. Should we move on to clear?
Clear. Yes. And maybe this is why this I'll say it's a program, did take a little while for me to sort of figure out how it was going to look, because as a talk therapist, I wasn't sure how to clear out the energy out of the body. I was knowing that talking is not doing it enough, and I was really struggling to get that clearing happening. So when I discovered EMDR, I found that was really helpful, because then all of a sudden we're tapping into the subconscious and we are actually clearing out those old memories and going back into things that are quite historic. But even then, yes, people were crying, but it wasn't.
Yep.
It still is not as physical as what I've found.
Having seen some of the releases that happen during a breath work.
Yes.
Most recently at the retreat that we just ran last month or month, whenever
May.
it
Was in May. Yeah.
I mean, geez.
Yeah. So let me tell you about that. So on our most recent individual retreat, I did a breathwork journey, and one of the ladies on our retreat, she had been in a bit of a funny energy on the Friday night, which she identified, and she ended up even going to bed early and didn't join us for our breath awareness session, which was pretty much just, I'd say it's more gentle breath work, but people did say they couldn't believe how hard that was.
Oh, really? That one?
Yeah, that one. I think what it is if people are just not used to thinking about their breathing, which of course it's automatic, so we don't really think about our breathing, all of a sudden if I'm telling you to breathe through your diaphragm and I'm really telling you the timings of your breath and then speeding it up or slowing it down, they were really noticing this is actually hard work. But anyway, that particular client didn't come to the Friday night session. She went to bed, and the next day she acknowledged what was going on for herself, and it sounded like she was going through a really tough time with the medical profession and dealing with support for her husband who was not in a good place. And
didn't she also say she was going to go home?
She was trying to not go home, so that's why she went to bed early on that Friday night. So she was really, really struggling with everything, and I could feel her energy wasn't the best. So anyway, we went into the breath work, and within 5 minutes, she was crying.
Oh, she was ready.
It was just bubbling out of her.
Yeah.
And then as part of the breathwork journey, I always encourage people to use their voice and, really let loose, and was encouraging them to scream when it came to certain releases. And she did. Yeah. She was screaming and howling and getting it all out. She was on all fours at one point.
Yeah, she was all over the place, which was amazing.
It was incredible to see. I was so proud of her because she was just following what her body was telling her.
Yeah.
She was just letting it all out. And that's what my experience in my training was as well. I was just letting my body take over. And that's what we don't do. We're so controlled. We're so in our minds, we're in our monkey minds really. And our body is actually where everything is stored. When we jump because of a reaction, that's because our body is predicting what it's thinking is going to happen.
Yeah.
So they say that our body is a record of the past, and if we don't get into that operating system, we're not clearing out those old patterns.
And it can be a thing with breath work if you're doing it in a room and there's other people, that you still can feel a little bit self-conscious. Like I remember I did on the very first one I did in Joondalup. And then through the headphones, you can hear other people screaming. And then it does give you that sort of
permission.
Yeah, permission, or just you just think, okay, well, I'm not going to stand out here. And she did that for our group.
Yeah,
I think.
They all at the end of that breathwork, they all really thanked her for being so loud.
Yeah.
Because of that reason, they sort of felt like, okay, if she can do it, that's the level, I can get there too. So it was a very noisy room, which that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing all the releasing.
Can I tell the bit where she came into the room afterwards? That's
sure.
One of my favourite
bits. Yeah.
So I think we had a break because that breath work goes for almost 3 hours, from start to finish including
like 90 minutes.
90 minutes for breath work and maybe a little bit for chatting and whatnot. Yeah. And then we had a break. Mm-hmm. She came dancing into the room for the next activity.
Yeah.
Dancing. Yeah. And I'm not lying. She was dancing, and then I remember vividly she said, I've got my mojo back.
Yeah, she did say something like that.
Yeah.
She just needed to release all that energy. She was full.
So I think that you couldn't pick a better example of what clear actually means. And I think that was the secret sauce that you had been looking for.
Yeah.
That talk therapy was not giving
me, no. And there is a lot more movement towards that in therapies now. They call it somatic practices, which means kind of in the body. They're trying to get people to shift things, out of their body. And even for me with my training, which I've mentioned on the breathwork episode, things were coming out of me that I didn't even know still had energy behind those memories. So that's where I think that talk therapy can kind of fall down a little bit, that if I was going to a therapist and talking through my history, I might have mentioned those things. In fact, I probably wouldn't have, because I didn't even think that they were that big a deal.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that my body was storing that energy from those experiences.
And is that because of part of the breathing process that you're going through? You're going into an altered state of consciousness, and therefore these things are just coming to you. Yeah,
they're just surfacing. They're just surfacing. Yeah. And the reason why we hold so much energy in our body is because when we go through anything, so they talk about when we take a breath, we breathe it in, it goes through a full cycle, and then we breathe it out. When we've gone through something difficult or traumatic, something about that process of that breath cycle would have been interrupted. Because even when you think about, we get a fright, what does our breath do?
Yeah.
Or we hold our breath. So that energy goes inside of us. So if we're in an uncomfortable situation for however long, that energy is now in our bodies. And so when does that come out? So that's why we've got to do the work to actually clear it out so that we don't have cell dis-ease that then leads to cell disease.
Yeah.
So we want to do these practices that clear things out.
And breathwork's the best one that you've
that
found.
I've personally come across. I think it's a really, really good one. Obviously, I'm always open to other modalities and things, but that's where maybe even things like Reiki or kinesiology or anything that's kind of shifting energies.
Yeah.
Through the body. Maybe yoga could be one of those ones as well. In fact, maybe yoga also is, because I've heard of people talk about they'll go into certain postures and they could burst into tears.
Yeah.
And that could be because it's hit a certain spot that just really releases. One of the things we did on the breathwork, because the breathwork training that I've done is trauma informed, we learnt particular trauma release exercises, which we did on our retreat. So it was a series of movements that you could do away from.
Yeah, everyone loved this.
They did, yeah. You could do it away from the breath, but it's a series of movements that kind of leave you with the with your body shaking. So it gets you to the point where your hips are shaking. There's a lot of movement happening, and that's because we store a lot of trauma around our hips. So these particular sets of exercises are designed to be able to help release that trauma that's stored. So again, that could be another practice people do that could release some of that energy.
Yeah, and that works well as part of a breath work.
It's beautiful as part of a breath work, but even when I was practicing prior to doing the retreat, I just went to a friend's house and said, hey, can I just practice this on you guys so I can just make sure that, the way I'm explaining it is correct and blah, blah, blah. And they could not believe how much that they were shaking. They were laughing. They had the same reaction as what I had when I was in Bali and it happened to me. I was just like, I cannot believe my body is shaking this much, which just tells you how much our body holds. And in fact, I'll give a quick personal story. Years ago, when I worked for Youth Focus, the agency I worked at before I did private practice, we had this supervision session with the whole team, and I just started crying, just tearing, and I didn't know what was causing it. I felt a bit embarrassed. So they let me sort of go for a walk and see if I could sort of compose myself, but I really just couldn't stop the tears. So they sent me home, and the next day I came back and said, I have no clue why I was crying and what was going on for me, but I think it was to do with the camp that I'd been on a few months before that. So we went through a massive debrief, me and my supervisor, for 2 hours about what happened on that particular camp, and my body shook for 2 full hours. I didn't even know that was possible. Like, that was just me talking and my body was shaking, my voice was shaking. But by the end of that 2 hours, I was completely calm and I was fine. And that was my first real indication of, holy moly, like your body really holds on to that energy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I wasn't even in a traumatic situation. I just had a really crazy busy weekend with the kids that weekend where...
Well, you're holding space. You're holding space for them.
I was. And actually, look, in fairness, I just remembered that there was a kid that we had to call an ambulance for because we thought she was having an episode, and I was holding space for her until the ambulance came. So it probably was a bit more full on than I remember. But my point is, my body held on to that. And even though I felt like I was fine and I went a couple of months, not even thinking about that camp, my body eventually went, nah, we're getting rid of this.
Wow. Yeah.
So that might happen to other people in different ways and they'd have no insight into what that was. Luckily for me, I worked for an agency that, really got me to sort of stop and think about what that was, and I got that good debrief and I could release it from my system. But, I mean, how many people are going to get that? Not very many.
Yeah. So if, obviously you can come on the retreat, but, if you can't get a spot, download that breathwork app.
Yeah.
Othership.
And there's loads of free stuff on YouTube as well.
There's free stuff,
meditations, breathworks, yoga, practices. There's all sorts of things. Even some of the shaking stuff that we do with our, our physical movements we do on our retreats where, you're shaking and you're shifting, the energy and stuff. There's lots of things that you can be doing physically to shift energy from yourself.
Yeah.
And could I just say as well, and the reason we do that is because when we've had that release of chemicals, so when we've had, a fright, or we've had something, even more stressful than that, we have all those chemicals in our system, and they are going to stay in our system if we don't shift them out or, wait till they deplete. So when an animal is in a shock, go through a situation where they have shock or they have a fright, they will shake before they go back to rest and digest. And, I've said this before in many episodes, but, back in the day of tribes, we had dancing, we had rituals, we had the drumming, we had the stomping, we had the chanting, we had all of these practices that helped shift these vibrations and energies from our system so that we can return to that rest and digest. But nowadays we go through something, keep going, and it's all that energy stored in our body.
That's what I was trying to tell Ali yesterday when she was in the kitchen with me looking out the window. And I was like, well, we haven't evolved that much. And back in the day, African tribes or American Indians or, Indigenous Australians all had these rituals.
That was so important to them.
So important. And just modern society has just kind of
dismissed
all of them. But the human body hasn't evolved.
Yeah.
So they were onto something and we just let it go. Okay. That was good. The final one is align, and this is what we do on day 2 of the retreat.
So it's getting really clear on the things that you value, because when we figure out what we value, then we can make sure that where we're putting our time, energy and resources are the things that are important to us. I talk about this all the time, but lots of times we are coming from what's expected from us, what society sort of prescribes for us, what our parents encourage us to do. There's all those things where we're really being led into the life that we have compared to stopping, really looking around and going, what are the bits that I'm really happy with and where do I need to make these changes and shifts? Or, am I actually living the life that is aligned with the things that I truly value? And if it's not, we have to make those changes or we're not going to be living very satisfying lives. So it's really looking at your values, looking at your goals and your visions for the future, and just making sure that the behaviours you're doing now are lining up with those things that are important to you or you're saying are important to you.
So what is a good way that people can start thinking about that?
So you could either Google values and just, get a whole big list of values and kind of look at what is it that's really important to me. Because if, for example, you're looking at, for me, I've noticed that what's really important to me, especially nowadays, is community. That's one of my values. And so if I didn't identify that, then I just would be, traveling along my day, my week, my month, not really thinking about that. But because I know my value is community, I've just set up that 30-day challenge.
Yes.
I'm reaching out to different people, trying to make sure that, I have connection. I'm doing the WhatsApp groups after the retreats. Hey?
Oh, the retreats. I thought
the
you were
retreats.
going to talk about the training that you did because they have.
Yeah, and even with my my trainings, both for the psychedelic retreat and then even the breath work, we have WhatsApp groups that I can stay, connected with people that I'm aligned with the breath work, not the breath work, the psychedelics. They have an alumni trainings that they do every month, so I can stay connected with people that way. But keeping connected with those communities will then mean that I'm being around people that have got the same values as me. I'm feeling supported. But if I didn't have that on my values or I didn't identify that was important to me, I wouldn't be taking those steps or doing those behaviours that line up with that.
Yep. That almost sort of, I know we've talked about this in a previous episode, is looking at maybe the people that you hang out with.
Yeah.
And are they aligned with you?
Yeah, or is it just habit because I've known you for 20 years?
Yeah, exactly.
And lots of the times that can be the case, that people can sort of have these friendships that are out of habit and routine and history, and you're not checking in. Actually, is it enjoyable when we catch up? And it's not saying go ahead and cut everyone out your life and, start again, but it could just be going, how can I tweak that in a way that would be more enjoyable for me? Because if I no longer enjoy, going to the pub for a beer, if my value is now around being healthier or having a healthy lifestyle, maybe I suggest we go for a walk or we, go play tennis together or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Do you find, because obviously on the retreat, you do the activities, I'm more logistics. Do people who join us for that know their value? Like, is that a common issue? I guess that's my point. Like, do people, because it sounds like something people would know, But
when would they know it? Because when are they checking it out?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
sort of saying.
no one's having those conversations.
Yeah.
No one's stopping and checking in with themselves. I mean, maybe if you're in a workplace where you might have done a personality test.
That's where they actually ram values down your throat. That was one of the things I disliked about the corporate world, is every bloody corporation has their set of values and everyone has to live by these values, which I understand. There's a place for that, don't get me wrong, but they try and make it like they're your values.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're the values that, the executives came up with.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because you were judged at your previous workplace.
Performance reviews on these. And look, the values were fine, but you're trying to pigeonhole 200 people into these 6 core values.
Yeah.
And if you don't live by them, well, you don't fit in this company.
Yeah. But that's an example of probably the only time you would really look at values.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah, no one's sitting around. I didn't
do that in my personal life.
That's right. You're not. But we need to.
Yeah.
But we need to, because usually our values come from our families.
Yeah.
And if you've got families with very rigid, views and values that have been passed to you, that's almost going to feel like that's your normal, compared to actually, well, truly, do I really feel that way as well? Or is that just been passed down to me and it's kind of my automatic now? So I do think we need to stop and really check that out, and just as importantly, we need to know what our partner's values are too.
Yeah.
Because once again, if we don't have those aligned, views and goals, then we might be putting our resources towards things that for one person it's really important, for the other person it's not.
So is this something that, even though, we do it on the retreat and people get a ton out of it, it's really just the beginning, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like it's an ongoing thing. And
it's an ongoing thing for all of us, like I think that healing is continuous and there'll be more things that show up for us. It's almost like layers of an onion that get peeled back. We'll deal with one thing and then another layer will kind of come out. That's one thing that I was really surprised about with my breathwork training, was just how much kept coming. Like when I kept doing the breathwork after breathwork, and I was thinking, what can I possibly set my intentions for now? And then more and more stuff would come up. So that's why I think, doing different modalities such as your breathwork or your journaling or your yoga, all these different things just allows for, that next layer to kind of be unraveled.
Yeah. And I think that actually ties in perfectly with the 30-day challenge, is because it might seem overwhelming. Like if someone's struggling right now and they're listening to this, it might feel like, oh man, that's a lot to unpack, but you can just start somewhere. Start.
It's just chipping away at it. Like even with the feeling sheets, we have them on our website. We have the instructions on our website. You could just start with that awareness. What am I actually feeling in my day?
Yep.
You could start with, Googling, energy givers and energy takers, and sort of looking at, okay, let me see the things that I'm currently doing that do give me good energy. Me going to bed on time, me eating good food, me being in the sunlight in the mornings. Like you could look at the things you're already doing, or you can then start looking at, okay, well, maybe I could add a couple of these things if I'm not doing any of those things. And then on the other side, it's looking at what are the things that are taking my energy. Me eating rubbish food right at the end of the night, or me staying up too late and not being in a good routine. They could be the things that are taking your energy for the morning.
And that's what the challenge is about, is, let's say that your thing is, instead of going to bed at 1 a.m., I'm going to bed at 10 p.m. And
well, I probably need to really baby step that to 10 p.m. Let's start with 12:30 and then over the month, bring it back. But yeah, it doesn't have to be anything huge, but it's just kind of going, what would it be that I know could help my energy? What would it be that, makes me feel better in my skin? Like, what are those practices that could just be really little? Like it's about having the baby step to take. And if you've got that big vision, that's your roadmap.
Yeah.
Because then that's going, wow, that would be amazing. If my life was like that, that would be amazing. But what are the baby steps that I could create just to work towards that? Yeah. And if it's something as simple as go outside and get the sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning, take your shoes off, put your feet on the bare earth. They don't have to be these huge practices. It's just something to go, right, I'm bringing myself back to my center. I'm being intentional. I'm coming back to myself.
Beautiful. Love it. Should we wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to join us on the 30-day challenge, you can join us on the website tracyquayle.com. And while you're on there, why not sign up for the newsletter as well, which is very easy. And you get our fortnightly newsletter that we send out with extra tips and advice that we don't share on the pod. The retreats. So we have the relationship retreat. I think when this pod comes out, it's pretty much going to time with spots becoming, because there's a wait list. There has been a wait list up until now. Depending on what day you're listening to this, you can either jump on the wait list and get in for the relationship retreat, or if there's any spots left, you can try and grab one, and that is for the September retreat.
Yes.
And then our individual Reconnect Self Retreat is in August. So hop on traceyquayle.com and get in touch with us about that. If you want to follow Tracey, it's at traceyquayle.therapy. Don't forget to support our sponsors, Ultratune Whitfords.
Say hi to Dee.
Say hi to Dee and the team. And until next time, bye-bye.
See ya.